I'm paying for my boyfriend's daughter's tuition, but she left my kids stranded on the freeway. It was a typical Wednesday evening at the local community center where our daughters attended dance class. The room buzzed with the latest pop hits, a backdrop to the flurry of leotards and ballet shoes. Amidst the chaos of parents chatting and kids practicing their steps, I first noticed Tom. He was hard to miss, really. Tall, with a friendly smile that seemed permanently etched on his face. He was watching his daughter Sarah, a 17-year-old with the same easy grin. My daughter, Emily, who's 16, had been coming here for years. I'd usually drop her off and head back to pick her up after class, but that day, I decided to stay. I found a spot on the bleachers, right where I got a clear view of the dance floor. I was trying to figure out a problem at work in my head, half watching the dance routines, when Tom sat next to me. "Tough routine they're learning today, huh?" he commented, nodding toward the girls. We struck up a conversation, mostly small talk about our kids and how they were handling school. It turned out we had a lot in common. Both of us were single parents. Me, divorced for 5 years from a man who turned out to be less than reliable, and Tom, a widower who lost his wife to illness 3 years back. There was a kind of ease in talking to him, probably because we both understood the trials of raising a teenager alone. As weeks turned into months, our casual chats became a routine. We'd share coffee after dance class, sometimes even dinner with the kids. I learned that Tom worked in IT and had flexible hours, which allowed him to spend a lot of time with Sarah. Meanwhile, I was juggling my job at a marketing firm with being a mom, which meant lots of late nights and even more takeout dinners. One chilly evening in November, over cups of steaming hot chocolate, Tom brought up the idea of moving in together. "It might be good for the girls," he suggested. "They seem to get along, and it could be easier on us too, financially speaking." I was taken aback at first. It was a big step, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Both our leases were up for renewal, and the girls did seem to enjoy each other's company. At least there were no complaints. Deciding to move in together was one thing. Actually, doing it was another. We spent weeks looking for the right place, somewhere close to both their schools and our jobs. We finally settled on a house that was a bit of a fixer-upper, but spacious, and in a great neighborhood. The move itself was chaotic. Boxes everywhere, furniture that didn't fit, and a never-ending list of things that needed fixing. But it was ours, and it felt like a fresh start. The girls each picked their rooms and were excited about decorating them. Sarah's room quickly filled with posters of her favorite bands and a shelf for all her dance trophies. Emily, on the other hand, chose a quieter setup, with lots of books and a small desk where she could draw. Watching them make their spaces their own, I felt a sense of accomplishment. Maybe this was going to work out after all. Our first dinner together in the new house was a makeshift affair. Pizza on paper plates because the kitchen was still a mess. We sat on the living room floor, laughing and sharing stories about our first disastrous cooking attempts. It was nice, feeling like a family, even if it was a bit unconventional. But as the days turned into weeks, it became clear that blending our families was going to be more challenging than I'd thought. Emily and Sarah were polite to each other, but there was a tension that hadn't been there before. Simple things like whose turn it was to choose the movie or disagreements over chores started to create friction. Living together as a newly blended family had its share of daily ups and downs. While the mornings often started off well enough, with Tom whipping up his famous pancakes and bacon, the evenings were a different story. As the novelty of our new living arrangement began to wear off, the reality set in with all its complexities. Tom was a hands-on dad, always trying to balance fairness with fun. He had this way of turning chores into games, which worked wonders for Sarah, but didn't always click with Emily. My approach was a bit more structured, leaning on routine to keep things running smoothly, especially with my hectic work schedule. These differing styles occasionally clashed, particularly when it came to enforcing house rules. Homework time was often a battleground. Sarah, ever the procrastinator, needed constant nudges to get started, while Emily preferred to dive right in after school. I found myself mediating more than I'd expected, trying to support Tom's more lenient approach while still holding on to my own principles about schoolwork and responsibilities. Dinner times were our attempt at bonding, a moment to come together and share our day's experiences. I tried to keep things light, often encouraging the girls to talk about the good parts of their day. Some evenings it worked beautifully, with laughter and stories filling the air. Other nights you could cut the tension with a knife, especially if the day had included a squabble over something as trivial as what show to watch or whose turn it was to do the dishes. One particular evening stands out when I tried to introduce a new rule: no phones at the dinner table. The idea was to encourage more face-to-face interaction, but it didn't go over well. Sarah thought it was draconian, and even Emily, usually the rule follower, saw it as an overstep. Tom backed me up, but I could tell he was conflicted, wanting to support me but not wanting to upset his daughter. Our weekends were supposed to be our time to relax and enjoy family outings. We planned trips to the local park, movie nights, and even a couple of barbecue evenings with neighbors. These activities were hit or miss. Sometimes the girls would get along famously, laughing and joking like sisters. Other times they'd barely speak to each other, each sticking to their phone or bringing a friend along as a buffer. Tom and I tried to give them space, not forcing the issue of bonding. We hoped that over time they'd find common ground without our interference. But as weeks turned into months, it seemed the divide only grew deeper. It was during one of our Saturday outings to a local museum that I realized the full extent of the tension. Emily was interested in the art exhibits, lingering over paintings and sculptures, while Sarah rushed through, more interested in the gift shop than the art. The day ended with a petty argument over which restaurant to go to for lunch, each girl insisting on a different place, neither willing to compromise. Despite these challenges, there were moments of genuine connection. I remember a rainy Sunday when the power went out. With no TV or internet, we ended up playing board games by candlelight. It was perhaps one of the few times I saw the girls laughing together, the competitive spirit of the game bringing out a camaraderie that was rare for them. Tom and I exchanged relieved smiles across the game board, hopeful that maybe this was a turning point. As winter approached, the holidays added another layer of complexity. Both girls had traditions they held dear, and Tom and I were determined to honor them all. We blended our holiday decorations, a mix of Emily's love for classic red and green and Sarah's preference for modern silver and blue. We planned a menu that included both families' favorite dishes for Christmas dinner, and the girls helped cook, which turned out to be a surprisingly peaceful activity. However, the stress of the season also brought new pressures. Buying gifts became a contentious issue, with each girl feeling the other was getting favored. I tried to keep things equal, but with Emily noticing every slight discrepancy, it was an uphill battle. The culmination of this tension was on Christmas Eve, when after opening their gifts, an argument broke out over a video game console Tom had bought for them to share. Emily thought it was unfair that it would stay in the living room, Sarah's territory, rather than her room. As the new year rolled in, I reflected on our first few months together. It hadn't been easy, and there were days I questioned our decision to blend our families this way. But then there were moments, fleeting as they were, where it felt like everything might just work out. These moments were what I clung to during the tougher times. I knew that if this family experiment was going to succeed, it would require patience, a lot of deep breaths, and probably a few more board games by candlelight. As I looked at Tom, who was always ready with a hopeful smile, I felt a resolve to keep trying. After all, family isn't just about the good times. It's about working through the tough ones together, too. The K-pop concert was supposed to be a breakthrough, a chance for the girls to bond over something they both loved. It had been Emily's idea originally. She'd been a fan for years. And when Sarah expressed a passing interest in one of the bands, Emily jumped at the opportunity to share something with her stepsister. The excitement started building weeks in advance. The girls spent evenings scrolling through music videos and band interviews, deciding on outfits that matched the band's style. I watched them from the kitchen, quietly hopeful as they laughed together, debating which songs the band would play. Tom was just as optimistic, glad to see a genuine connection forming. The day of the concert, they were buzzing with energy. Sarah had just gotten her driver's license, and Tom, thinking it a good step toward responsibility, suggested she drive them to the venue. I was nervous about it, but he assured me it would be fine. "It's only half an hour away, and it's a straight shot on the highway," he reasoned. After some back and forth, I agreed, handing over the keys to my car with a stern reminder about safety. They left mid-afternoon, a flurry of giggles and excitement. Tom and I waved them off from the driveway, then retreated inside, both of us feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. The house was unusually quiet without them, and we found ourselves on the couch, pretending to watch a movie while actually checking our phones every few minutes for updates. Around 6 p.m., my phone rang, shattering the quiet. Emily's name flashed on the screen, and my heart sank a bit. Why would she be calling now unless something was wrong? I answered quickly, my voice tight with worry. "Mom, you need to come get us," Emily said, her voice trembling. She was trying to stay calm, but the panic was evident. "What happened? Are you both okay?" I asked, standing up from the couch, already reaching for my keys. "We're okay, but Sarah left with her friend. They just drove off and left us here," she explained, her words rushed. They had stopped at a restaurant on the highway for a quick bite before the concert, and after a disagreement about waiting times and concert start times, Sarah decided not to wait for Emily and her friend. I was furious and scared all at once. Stranded on a highway restaurant miles from home, anything could have happened. Tom overheard the conversation and his face darkened. "I'll call her now," he said, his tone sharp with anger. While he tried to reach Sarah, I organized an Uber to pick the girls up. The wait was agonizing, and it took all my self-control not to drive out there myself. Tom's conversation with Sarah was brief and heated. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "She's on her way to the concert, says it was a misunderstanding," he relayed, clearly trying to keep his composure. "A misunderstanding? She left them stranded, Tom. That's not just a misunderstanding," I snapped, the fear for my daughter turning quickly into anger. I was beyond frustrated when I found out what my stepdaughter did. My daughter was stranded because of her, and that was not something I could just let slide. So I called my stepdaughter to figure out what the hell was going on. When I finally got a hold of her, I didn't expect the conversation to go perfectly, but I didn't expect her to hang up on me either. It wasn't just rude, it felt like a slap in the face after everything I've tried to do to build a relationship with her. After she hung up, I was fuming. I mean, who does that? I needed to talk to her to explain how serious what she did was, and she just dismissed me like I was nothing. When I told my fiancé what happened, I thought he'd be on my side, especially since he's the one who always talks about how important it is for us to be on the same page when it comes to parenting. But instead, he was mad at me for what he called overstepping my boundaries. According to him, I was out of line for trying to parent his daughter, and that's why she reacted the way she did. He did end up grounding her, which, to be honest, didn't feel like enough. Grounding is fine for when a kid messes up at school or something, but this felt way more serious. My daughter could have been in real danger because of her actions, and a few days without her phone just didn't seem like it matched the seriousness of the situation. But when I tried to talk to my fiancé about it, he didn't agree. He kept saying things like, "She's just a kid," and "kids do dumb stuff," as if that somehow made it okay. I tried to explain that while kids do make mistakes, they also need to learn from them, especially when those mistakes put someone else at risk. But he wasn't having it. He seemed more focused on making sure his daughter didn't feel too bad than on teaching her a lesson about responsibility. It really felt like he was downplaying what happened, and I couldn't just sit back and let that slide. That's when I decided that I wasn't going to keep paying for my stepdaughter's dance classes. I've been covering those costs for a while now because my fiancé's work hours have been cut and his ex doesn't pitch in financially. But after what happened, I told him that I wasn't going to keep paying unless they both started taking the situation more seriously. I didn't feel like I was being unreasonable. I just wanted them to understand that actions have consequences, and that letting her off easy wasn't going to help anyone in the long run. Of course, my fiancé didn't see it that way. He said I was being too harsh, that taking away something she loves wasn't fair, and that I was making a bigger deal out of this than it needed to be. His ex even got involved, telling me that I couldn't take away dance just because her daughter behaved like a teenager. She accused me of overreacting, and said that I was punishing her daughter for something that all kids do. It's like no one else could see how serious this was. They both tried to guilt trip me, saying that without my financial help, their daughter wouldn't be able to continue with dance, and that it would break her heart. They even pointed out that they can't afford it on their own, and now they're struggling to pay for her school too, since my fiancé's hours have been cut for almost a year now. I get that things are tight, but I'm not about to reward bad behavior by just going along with things like nothing happened. But here's the thing, I don't think it's cruel to expect some level of accountability. It's not like I'm saying she can never dance again, just that she needs to understand the severity of what she did before she goes back to something she loves. Right now, it feels like they're all just brushing this off, and I'm the only one who's seeing how serious this could have been. My daughter's safety was put at risk, and that's not something I can just ignore. My fiancé keeps saying that grounding her is enough, and that I need to back off and let him handle it. But I'm not sure he's handling it at all. If grounding her was actually teaching her something, maybe I'd feel differently. But right now it just seems like a slap on the wrist. And the more they argue with me about this, the more I feel like they're missing the point entirely. So now I'm stuck in this awkward position where I feel like the bad guy. His ex is mad at me, my fiancé is frustrated, and my stepdaughter probably hates me right now. But I'm standing my ground because I don't want to send the message that what she did is okay. If that makes me the asshole, then so be it. But I'd rather be the asshole who stood up for my daughter's safety than the one who just let this all slide. What really bothers me is that this is making me question everything. Am I being too harsh? Should I just let this go? Or am I right to want some real consequences for what happened? It's hard to know where the line is sometimes, especially when you're not the biological parent. But I can't shake the feeling that if we don't address this now, it's just going to lead to bigger problems down the road. I want to be supportive of my fiancé and his daughter, but not at the expense of my own daughter's well-being. And right now, it feels like they're asking me to choose between standing up for what I believe is right and keeping the peace in our family. It's a tough spot to be in, and I'm not sure what the best move is. But one thing I do know is that I can't just pretend like everything is fine when it's not. Update 1. So I just found out some more information that kind of adds a new layer to this whole mess. Turns out part of the reason this situation even happened is because my daughter's friend is the ex-girlfriend of my stepdaughter's friend's current boyfriend. Yeah, it's as complicated as it sounds, and apparently there's been some drama and tension between them because of that. I guess there's been some quarreling and high school drama going on, and that might have fueled what my stepdaughter did. But honestly, I'm not sure if that really changes anything for me. Like, I get that teenagers can get caught up in their feelings and act out, but I still can't shake the feeling that what my stepdaughter did was completely out of line. Here's the thing. Even if there was drama, and even if my stepdaughter felt like she needed to take her friend's side or whatever, it doesn't justify putting my daughter in a potentially dangerous situation. I mean, that's what this all boils down to for me. We're not just talking about some petty argument or a bit of name-calling. We're talking about a decision that could have had real consequences. And that's why I'm still so upset. I've been going over this in my head since I found out, trying to figure out if maybe I'm being too harsh or if I'm missing something here. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like my stepdaughter needs to understand that what she did wasn't just teenage stuff. It was irresponsible and reckless. And if we just brush it off as normal high school drama, what kind of message does that send? I also get that there's a lot of pressure on kids these days, and that relationships can feel like the end-all be-all when you're a teenager. But that's exactly why it's so important for her to learn now that there are certain lines you just don't cross no matter what drama's going on. My daughter shouldn't have been dragged into this mess just because of some stupid feud between her friend and my stepdaughter's friend's boyfriend's ex. It's just ridiculous. My fiancé, though, seems to think this new information somehow makes everything less serious. He's still stuck on the whole kids do dumb stuff angle and thinks that now that we know the backstory, we should cut my stepdaughter some slack. He said more than once that she was just trying to be a good friend and that her intentions weren't bad. But intentions don't really matter to me in this case. Actions do. And her actions were completely out of line. I'm not saying she's a bad kid or that she doesn't deserve to have friends or anything like that, but she does need to understand that her actions have consequences, and those consequences don't just disappear because there's some teenage drama involved. If anything, this should be a wake-up call for her to realize that she needs to think before she acts, especially when other people's safety is on the line. Now, I'm even more convinced that grounding her isn't enough. If anything, it feels like we're giving her a free pass to keep acting out whenever she feels like it, as long as she thinks she's doing it for a friend. And that's just not okay with me. My fiancé keeps telling me that I need to back off and let him handle it, but I'm finding it harder and harder to just stand by and watch while he lets her off the hook. I'm also worried about the message this is sending to my daughter. She's the one who got caught in the middle of this whole mess, and now it feels like her feelings and safety are being overlooked because of some teenage drama that she had nothing to do with. I don't want her to feel like her well-being is less important than keeping the peace with my stepdaughter. That's not fair to her, and it's not something I'm willing to accept. At this point, I've decided that I'm not going to change my stance on the dance classes. I know my fiancé and his ex are going to be mad, but I feel like this is the only way to make it clear that what happened wasn't okay. I'm not doing this to be cruel or to punish my stepdaughter for the sake of it. I'm doing it because I feel like it's the only way to make sure she understands how serious this is. Maybe I am being too harsh. Maybe I'm letting my anger get the best of me. But I can't just sit back and pretend like this didn't happen or that it doesn't matter. It does matter. And if that makes me the bad guy in this situation, then I guess that's just how it's going to be. I'd rather be the bad guy who stands up for what's right than the one who lets something like this slide. I'm still going to support my fiancé and his daughter in other ways, but I'm drawing the line here. Until they both start taking this more seriously, I'm not going to pay for dance classes, and I'm not going to apologize for that. I hope they'll come around and see where I'm coming from, but if they don't, I'll just have to deal with that. At the end of the day, I know I'm doing what I think is right, even if it's not the easy thing to do. And I'm okay with that. I just hope that in the long run, this helps my stepdaughter realize that her actions have real consequences and that she can't just brush things off because there's drama involved. That's a lesson she needs to learn now, before she makes an even bigger mistake later on. Update 2. It's been a month since everything went down, and I figured it's time for an update. My ex-fiancé and I are officially separating, and he's in the middle of moving out of my house. Unfortunately, things have gotten really bitter between us because I refused to back down on my stance about what happened. I didn't change my decision to stop paying for my stepdaughter's dance classes, and that seemed to be the final straw for him. The more I stood my ground, the more hostile he became. He started saying some pretty cruel things, stuff that really caught me off guard. One of the worst things he said was that I was trying to drive a wedge between him and his daughter, claiming I was competing with her for his affection. Honestly, that's probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but it really showed me how far apart we've grown because of this issue. It was like he was grasping at anything to hurt me or make me doubt myself, but all it did was make it clear that we were no longer on the same page, and maybe we never really were. Amidst all this, my daughter finally opened up to me about what had been happening at school and with her stepsister. She told me that her stepsister and her friends had been mean to her for a while, even before we all moved in together. It wasn't full-on bullying, but it was definitely mean-spirited stuff. My daughter said her stepsister would take her things, like her makeup and her favorite tank top, and never return them. There was even one time when she borrowed my daughter's laptop and deleted several of her movies without asking. These might seem like small things on their own, but when you add them all up, it's clear that there was a lot of underlying tension between our kids that I had no idea about. What really hit me hard was when my daughter admitted that she never told me about any of this because she didn't want to cause more tension between me and my ex-fiancé. She was trying to protect me, even though she was the one dealing with all this crap at school and at home. Hearing that just broke my heart. I realized that the relationship between our kids was much worse than I'd ever realized, and it made it even clearer that I'd made the right decision to end things. After hearing all this, I knew there was no turning back. I decided that it was best for both of us if they moved out, and I told my ex-fiancé that it was time for them to go. Of course, he didn't take it well and has been trying to drag out the moving process as much as possible. He's using every excuse in the book to delay leaving, but I'm at my limit, and I'm not going to back down. I've already got eviction papers ready to go in case he tries to drag this out any further. It's been a tough month, but I'm determined to see this through. I have to say, despite how difficult this has been, I'm relieved that I stood my ground. My daughter is my top priority, and I can't and won't tolerate anyone mistreating her, especially not in her own home. This whole situation has been eye-opening for me. I'm sad that things had to end this way, but at the same time, I know it's for the best. I'd rather be single and have a peaceful, happy home for my daughter than stay in a toxic situation that's only going to get worse. There are moments when I feel a bit of guilt creeping in, wondering if I could have handled things differently, but then I remind myself why I made these decisions in the first place. My daughter deserves to feel safe and respected in her own home, and she shouldn't have to put up with being treated badly by anyone, let alone her stepsister. And honestly, I deserve better too. I deserve a partner who respects my decisions and doesn't try to undermine me or turn things around to make me feel like I'm in the wrong for standing up for my kid. As for my ex-fiancé, I hope he can come to terms with what happened and eventually see why things ended the way they did. Maybe one day he'll understand that this wasn't about driving a wedge between him and his daughter or competing for his affection. It was about setting boundaries and standing up for what's right. But whether he gets that or not, I'm moving on and focusing on creating a better environment for my daughter and me. Looking back, I can see how things started to unravel long before the big blow-up. There were signs that we weren't as compatible as I thought, but I ignored them because I wanted to make things work. I thought that if we just pushed through, we could make it work. But now I see that sometimes it's better to let go than to keep fighting a losing battle. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Moving forward, I'm focusing on my daughter and myself. We're both going to need some time to heal from this, but I'm hopeful that this decision will lead to a healthier and happier life for both of us. I'm taking it one day at a time, but I know I'm on the right path. I've already started making plans for us to do more things together, just the two of us, so we can rebuild our relationship and make some positive memories after all this drama. In the end, I'm proud of myself for sticking to my values and not letting anyone push me around. I know I made the right decision for me and my daughter, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds. It's not going to be easy, but we're strong, and we'll get through this together.